It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Boris Johnson is referred to police over new claims he broke COVID lockdown rules by hosting friends at Chequers. The former Prime Minister is already being investigated by MPs. His lawyers say what he did was lawful. Also tonight, the fiery riot on the streets of Cardiff as police face questions over an apparent pursuit of two teenagers who then died. Searching for signs of what happened to Madeleine McCann, the police scouring a reservoir in Portugal. Why family ties will no longer count for foreign students, barred from bringing their families to the UK to try to cut net migration figures. An upgrade to the economy from the IMF, but they warned that inflation could stick around for longer than expected. And living in public, dying in secret, the family of the disgraced TV star Rolf reveal he's passed away. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30. Hello, good evening. Boris Johnson was already facing a steep climb to ascend again to the summit of politics. Tonight, that looks positively Everestian after it was confirmed he's been referred to the police over new claims he broke lockdown rules. His ministerial diary has revealed that friends went to the Prime Minister's country retreat at Chequers during the pandemic. In the next few weeks, an MP's committee is due to rule on a potential punishment over other breaches in Downing Street. Our political correspondent Joe Pike has this report.
Be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
It's the issue that's dogged him and damaged him for more than a year.
I'm here to say to you, hand on heart, that I did not lie to the House.
We knew about lockdown-busting parties at Downing Street, but did the rule-breaking extend to Chequers, with the Prime Minister inviting friends to his official country residence in Buckinghamshire? While Boris Johnson has been touring the world, making speeches and making money, government lawyers have handed evidence from his own ministerial diaries to the police. The assertion by the Cabinet Office that there have been further COVID rule breaches is totally untrue. Lawyers have examined the events in question and advised that they were lawful. No contact was made with Mr Johnson before these incorrect allegations were made, both to the police and to the Privileges Committee. This is both bizarre and unacceptable. And while Boris Johnson's allies want to move on...
I'm just hearing this now, but my sense of all of this is that, frankly, the Prime Minister, or former Prime Minister, has been through that. We've investigated that. The country's dealt with that. I think the world's moved on, quite frankly, and it raises further questions about the role of the civil service in all of this.
Opposition parties are angry.
Right now, I think the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, needs to make sure that not a single penny more is spent on Boris Johnson's defence during his lying inquiry. And I think Boris Johnson, in light of everything that's happened, needs to consider whether really he should be an MP.
I just believe it's wrong that the taxpayer is continuing to fund Boris Johnson's legal defence here. Rishi Sunak should bring that to an end. And Boris Johnson will now have to explain himself yet again to the authorities. This is just more sleaze.
Both the Met and Thames Valley Police are now investigating.
If he saw a friend on a social visit when he shouldn't have, it would be fixed penalty notices. If that wasn't falling within one of the exceptions in the rules, so in the region of 50 to 100 and something pounds.
These latest revelations could delay the Privileges Committee inquiry into whether Mr Johnson misled Parliament. And yet again, it drags Rishi Sunak into answering questions about the past when he's desperate to focus on the future.
And Joe's in Downing Street tonight. And Joe, the sense was a potential political comeback for Boris Johnson had been receding. Had it got even more remote now, do you think?
I think it probably has, Anna, but the real problem here, I think, is really for Rishi Sunak. On his first day at Downing Street, on the steps behind me, he promised integrity, professionalism, accountability at every level of government, and yet bad headlines about bad past alleged behaviour just seem to not want to stop. You've got Boris Johnson and Partygate omnipresent. You've got recently Dominic Raab and how he treated civil servants, Nadeem Zahawi's finances, and then in the past few days, Suella Braverman and this speed awareness course, an issue which isn't yet resolved. Of course, these sort of mini scandals don't have the Prime Minister at their heart, although Rishi Sunak, of course, was fined for one Partygate event. But this does tarnish, I think those in Number 10 believe, the Conservative brand, something that, of course, Rishi Sunak wants to burnish ahead of the next general election expected next year. The other issue here, which I think is of concern to some Conservative MPs, is the fact that the Civil Service and the Cabinet Office were the ones to refer all of this information to both the police and to the Privileges Committee. It feeds into a worry, a concern in some parts of the Conservative Party, the backbenches, that some civil servants aren't being entirely fair and balanced with how they have worked with some Conservative ministers. Now, of course, senior civil servants, I'm sure the Prime Minister would contest that, but it doesn't help Rishi Sunak in governing, and that is difficult when he has a lot of challenges on his plate, including immigration later this week.
Thank you. Police in South Wales have referred themselves to their watchdog tonight after a crash which killed 2 teenagers and led to a riot. CCTV footage appeared to show officers pursuing 2 people on an electric bike. Teenagers Kyrie Sullivan and Harvey Evans died, and fireworks were thrown at police in the violence which followed. Dan Whitehead reports from the scene.
The fires burned through the night in this residential area of Cardiff. Violent clashes erupted between police and around 150 people, triggered by the deaths of 2 teenage boys, 15-year-old Harvey Evans and 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan, both killed in a crash just meters away, with significant questions over whether they'd been chased by police. In the light of day, the true extent of the damage was clear. Amid the clean-up operation, fires still smouldered. People's cars either smashed or burnt out. At the scene of the crash, Harvey's godmother told Sky News the violence broke out because of how police dealt with the victims' families.
We were all at the scene and the police just was having none of it. They wouldn't let the dads come up and see their own kids laying on the floor. Wouldn't even let them do nothing. It was disgusting how they treated them. Yeah.
What was Harvey like?
Harvey was he was amazing, like a bubbly guy, like just always happy, always on the go.
Police say officers were injured during the violence. A number of arrests have been made, and police say there will be more.
To be honest, very scary, shocking. And my kids, they didn't sleep till 3 o'clock in the night. But honestly, it was terrible. I've never ever seen like that situation in my lifetime.
Police say the level of violence towards emergency services and damage to property and vehicles was totally unacceptable. But there will be questions now to answer as to how this situation escalated so quickly.
CCTV footage appears to show 2 people on a bike, quickly followed by a police van. It was captured just 3 minutes before the fatal crash, less than half a mile away.
This footage is being recovered as part of the investigation and will assist us in piecing together the circumstances leading up to the collision. The families are being kept up to date. We can confirm that the following investigations have been carried out so far, and when the collision occurred, there were no police vehicles on Snowdon Road.
Police took no questions, but the force confirmed it has referred itself to the police watchdog. Community leaders want calm here, but there is tension and a need for answers as to what led to the deaths of 2 young boys. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Ely, Cardiff.
Well, the violence last night spread across a small area in the west of Cardiff. Our data and forensics unit and correspondent Tom Cheshire have been looking at what we know of what exactly happened and when.
Well, there's another one going off here. Watch out.
This was the climax of the violence on Stanway Road. It had been building for hours. This is the story of how a road collision became a riot. Ely is about 5 miles west of Cardiff city centre. This is the earliest footage we have, filmed on Frank Road and now part of the investigation. 5:59 in the evening. An electric bike and a police van apparently following behind. The stretch of road is 8.5 metres long. Based on the time taken for both vehicles to cross, The Sky News data and forensics team calculates they're travelling at around 28 miles an hour, with the van 15 metres behind the bike. Officers are called to the scene of the crash on Snowdon Road shortly afterwards, at 6:03 p.m. There are two bodies, which we've blurred, to the right of the bus. Police said the collision had already occurred when officers arrived, and that no vehicles were involved. But remember the bus, it will help us understand the location later. At 8:20, South Wales Police Cardiff tweet to tell people to avoid coming to the area. Police assemble near the intersection of Snowdon Road and Stanway Road to form a divide between the incident and people gathering further down. This is the scene of the accident, the same bus as here. Down from there on Stanway Road, more than 100 people gather and start throwing projectiles. Night falls and the crowd grows more violent. Around 10 to 10, they start a fire. It's put out, but it's not long before another is set. During the live stream, residents can be heard blaming police for the death of the two teenagers. In the most heated moments, the crowd attacks police with fireworks. In turn, they charge. The action shifts to Highmead Road nearby, but in the early hours, the crowd disperses, the cars still burning. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
It is 16 years now since Madeleine McCann disappeared, but in the town near the reservoir being searched by police, the chief suspect is still remembered. One man told us that Christian B., a convicted German sex attacker, had appeared bohemian and was there a long time. The reservoir is about 30 miles from where Madeleine went missing in Praia de Luge. The focus is an area around a peninsula on the western side of the reservoir. Search teams on foot and in boats have been seen working throughout the day. Sky's Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is there.
They started early. After 16 years without answers, there was no time to lose. Officers from Germany, Portugal and the UK searching a reservoir 30 miles from where Madeleine McCann disappeared. The 3-year-old went missing from her hotel room in 2007. This convicted German sex offender, Christian B., has been named as the prime suspect in the case. He denies any involvement, but this is a place he allegedly called his paradise. And after receiving a tip-off, German prosecutors ordered a new search.
I can't disclose the background at the moment, why we are searching there and what we hope to find there. That shall remain a secret for the moment.
Throughout the day, teams scoured the ground, hoping it would reveal any secrets it may hold. Boat teams waited on the water, officers determined to uncover any evidence that may be hidden here.
When you have a look at this reservoir, it's absolutely massive, and the idea of being able to search it all in 2 days seems like a mammoth task. But from watching the teams here, they appear to be focusing on carefully controlled areas. This search is clearly targeted.
Christian B. lived in the area when Madeleine went missing from Praia de Luge. Her disappearance sparked a huge investigation, drawing worldwide attention. In the town near the reservoir, people still remember him. Constantino describes him as a bohemian who he'd see wandering around.
He was here for a long time. I knew him from sight because I used to work at Praia de Luge at some of the events. And he was there when it happened.
For more than a decade, this tragedy has left a shadow on the region. Once again, people here and across Portugal are hoping for answers. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News in Portugal.
A man who murdered a 7-year-old girl was sentenced to a minimum of 29 years in jail today. But for Nikki Allen's mother, it was not enough. She has waited 3 decades to see David Boyd convicted and says he should have had life without parole. Sky's North of England correspondent Shingi Marike has this report.
Nikki, the way she was murdered, and I've had to listen to it. It's horrendous.
For more than 3 decades, Sharon Henderson has fought tirelessly for justice. Today, her daughter's murderer was finally sentenced, but it wasn't the sentence she hoped for.
And I thought life would have meant life without parole. I've been let down again by the justice system.
That night in 1992, David Boyd lured Nikki to a derelict building, beating her with a brick and stabbing her 37 times in the chest. In sentencing Boyd, the judge said Nikki would have felt unimaginable terror.
Nikki must have been petrified. It would not have taken the 7-year-old long to appreciate that she was trapped in that cold and dark building and that you were coming through the window to get her.
The original police investigation was riddled with mistakes.
I'm arresting you on suspicion, okay, of that offence.
The investigation was reopened in 2017, with advances in forensics allowing officers to match Boyd's DNA to traces found on Nikki's clothing, decades after she was killed. In a victim impact statement read out in court, Sharon said that she felt after the original investigation that she had to fight for justice for Nikki, and that she was frustrated that she felt she wasn't listened to. But this time, police worked hard to prove Boyd was responsible.
For us as an investigation team, we've had to go through all of that material to look and scrutinise what was done in 1992 up until 2013, and then from when we've started as well. So it's been a real challenge from an investigative point of view, and that is why it's taken some time as well to get to the point where we are now.
So many things have changed in the 3 decades since Sharon lost Nikki, who she called her bright and sparky child who had a beautiful smile. But the pain, hurt and anger remain the same. Shingi Marike, Sky News, Newcastle Crown Court.
Russia says more than 70 attackers, part of an alleged incursion from Ukraine, have been killed in the Belgorod region. Moscow has blamed Ukrainian militants, but videos posted by the groups suggest they are Russians fighting against President Putin's forces. A disciplinary panel has decided that failures by a former Metropolitan Police officer to properly investigate 2 flashing reports made against Wayne Couzens amounted to gross misconduct. The panel found that former PC Samantha Lee did not make the correct inquiries over 2 incidents reported at a restaurant in Kent in February of 2021, one of which happened just days before Couzens murdered Sarah Everard. Prince Harry has lost his legal challenge over being allowed to pay for police protection when he's in the UK. A judge ruled the committee, which included a representative of the late Queen and the Home Secretary, had correctly found allowing Harry to do so would not be in the public interest. Record-breaking immigration figures are expected to be announced later this week, and today the government moved to try to reduce them in the future. The families of most international students will, from January, find it much harder to join them in the UK, something which universities told us could disproportionately impact women. Our political correspondent Liz Bates has more.
This is Gustavo. He's an international student at Glasgow University, living with his wife and 2 daughters. But under new measures designed to lower immigration, his family wouldn't be entitled to be here with him.
It's not just about studying and or working. I also have my duties as a father. So I will not come if they could not come with me.
It's part of an effort to bring down the UK's soaring immigration numbers that have been causing problems for the Prime Minister, even overshadowing some of the recent G7 summit in Japan, not helped by his Home Secretary.
Are you failing on immigration targets, Home Secretary?
It's been a tough time for the Home Secretary. She's been causing tensions, firstly by piling pressure on the Prime Minister to bring immigration numbers down. At the same time, she's been accused of breaking the ministerial code over a speeding ticket. All this as new immigration figures are about to come out that show, by its own standards, her department is failing. Today's announcement should go some way to reversing the trend, as in 2019, 269,000 students with study visas brought an additional 16,000 dependents. Last year, that number had rocketed to 486,000 student visas and 136,000 dependents. It's been welcomed by many Conservative MPs who say reducing immigration is important to their voters. But there is concern among universities about which students this could affect.
I think it's clear that if anything that reduces the ability to bring dependents is almost certainly going to affect female students, for example. We know that globally women have greater caring responsibilities. So we really think that the review process that has actually been announced as part of this package really needs to look at that. What's the impact on particular communities?
Back in Glasgow, Gustavo is reflecting on his time in the UK. A reminder of the people behind the policies. Liz Bates, Sky News, Westminster.
The IMF has not been the government's favourite international forecaster in recent years, repeatedly playing down the prospects of the UK economy. Today, though, it upgraded its economic predictions and said the UK won't, after all, be the laggard among major industrialised nations. But it wasn't all positive news, as our economics and data editor Ed Conway explains.
Well, this is the latest health check from the International Monetary Fund on the state of the UK economy. And let's just show you what they were forecasting last time around. This is showing you not just the UK, you can see that over there on the right-hand side, the red bar there, but also other economies around the G7, the group of 7 industrialised economies. And you've got the US there, Canada, Japan, and you can see, look, Britain does have the weakest growth in 2023. And when I say growth, that's gross domestic product growth, the rate at which our national income is growing each year. So that was last time around. That was only a few months ago. Have a look at these latest forecasts. Look at the red bar there. Look, it goes up. It goes up from minus 0.3% to 0.4%. Still pretty weak by the standards of recent years, but nonetheless not the weakest in the G7 anymore. And a lot of people are asking, if the IMF can make big mistakes like this in their forecasts, how much should we trust their numbers anymore? This is what I put to the managing director.
How important is it, how big of a deal is it if the IMF does keep getting things wrong? Does that damage your reputation, do you think?
I actually think that our staff, my colleagues, deserve credit for being agile in how we look at changing conditions and being fast to adjust projections so we can give as clear a picture as we can at the time that you would agree is the foggiest we have seen in many decades.
One other thing the fund is talking about is the idea that inflation, so the rate at which prices are rising each year, could be stickier than people had expected. What does that mean? Well, this line is showing you inflation, the rate at which we are seeing that cost of living increasing. You can see how it's gone up into double-digit levels recently. Here's what the Bank of England recently thought that was going to happen to inflation. It was going to come down quickly, they thought. In November, they thought it would come down really quickly. When they updated those forecasts in February, they thought it would come down even more quickly. So look at that blue line. Now, their latest forecast, and the IMF basically endorses this, look, that blue line goes even further out into the future, so higher inflation for longer. And they say that also means that interest rates potentially could be higher for longer. All of these things that are squeezing people's living standards could go on for longer than anyone would like.
Ed Conway there. Now, for months, the questions has been, will he or won't he? But tomorrow, the waiting will end for the one man who it seems might stand half a chance of stopping Donald Trump having another run at the White House. Ron DeSantis, aiming to be the Republican nominee at the next US election, is expecting to announce his presidential bid in an event with Elon Musk. Well, Sky's US correspondent Mark Stone joins us now from Palm Beach County in Florida. So does that answer the where, Mark? Florida at least, but what about the when and how this announcement will be made?
Well, look, we don't know it will be Florida, to be honest, Anna. All we do know is that it will be in cyberspace. It will be on Twitter in an audio conversation with the owner of Twitter, Elon Musk. It's certainly not a conventional presidential run announcement, but then he is not a conventional politician, rather like the man he would like to beat, Donald Trump, in terms of beating to be the Republican nomination. Ron DeSantis is not your average politician, but he is very, very popular indeed down here in Florida, where he is serving his second term as governor. He won that second term last year with a landslide majority. He is a man who some say is Trump without the chaos, a man who has parroted many Trumpian policies, but people think that he could deliver those in a way that Trump, because of his chaos, was unable to, which either makes him a very exciting candidate or a very frightening candidate. The announcement will be, as I say, on Twitter tomorrow night, local time, 6 p.m. We also expect that there will be a campaign video as well that will be released. And I can tell you that having travelled down the east coast of Florida through the course of today, yes, yes, many people are very, very excited about this man that fights wokeism, that says that wokeism comes to die in Florida, one of his catchphrases. They're excited by him, but this always has been a swing state. There are plenty here who are pretty concerned about a President DeSantis.
Keep an eye out on that. Thank you very much indeed, Mark Stone, there live in Florida. Rolf Harris lived his final years in solitude and disgrace, one of the best-known names from British television for 4 decades, but also a convicted paedophile. His family revealed today he's died at the age of 93. His death certificate suggests he passed away nearly 2 weeks ago. Katie Spencer reports.
G'day and welcome to Rolf's Cartoon Club.
He was, for many decades, a much-loved face on British television.
Timey kangaroo down, sport, timey kangaroo down.
As an entertainer, Rolf Harris built his hugely successful career on his appeal to children. An appeal he leveraged, hiding the fact he was a sexual predator. Harris was welcomed everywhere.
You're OK with the smell of turpentine, I hope?
Well, we'll tell, won't we, soon?
Breathe that air, you feel it all over your skin. It's good, and that sort of feeling you want to give somebody a big hug like that.
Trusted even to warn kids about paedophiles. He'd been abusing children for years when he made this educational video.
And it's that sort of touching I want to talk about today, because it helps you to understand the sort of touching that doesn't make you feel too good. My heart goes out to those survivors today who are carrying a burden of pain that's got nothing to do with anything they did and everything to do with a predator who used his celebrity, his position of influence, to engage with them and ultimately abuse them.
Until his arrest in 2013, he enjoyed a stellar career.
Making his first appearance here at what used to be BBC Television Centre. And after decades on our screens, his fall from grace would be spectacular. His MBE, OBE, CBE would all be taken away from him after he was convicted for sexually assaulting 2 young girls.
Harris was 84 by the time his crimes caught up with him. His youngest victim was 7. His wife Alwyn stood by him throughout, so too his daughter Bindi. Even though he was convicted for grooming her childhood friend, repeatedly indecently assaulting her from the age of 13.
People will remember him as an entertainer, remember to a certain time, for a period of time, he was unique, that he actually lived in the hearts of the nation, and also was pretty good at reinventing himself. You know, he took to the main stage at Glastonbury, became one of those you know, guilty pleasures for the rock and roll world. But he will be remembered, unfortunately, for his crimes.
Released from prison after 3 years, Harris never publicly admitted his crimes, dismissing his victims as seekers of fame and money, struggling with how he'd gone from TV personality to pariah. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview, including Rolf Harris's death, featuring on the front of the Metro its headline, Vile Rolf's Secret Funeral, as you can see. Well, tonight we'll be joined by the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Soda, and the Home Affairs editor of The Times, Matt Dathan.